to welcome all of you to the Center for Teaching and Learning's first annual Scholarship of Teaching Conference. The Center for Teaching and Learning is a new center. We just became quote-unquote official last spring, and this is our second event. Our mission is to provide resources, workshops, discussion groups, and anything else that faculty wish to have that involves pedagogy and improving pedagogy on campus. Today's event is our second of many to come. In the immediate future, November 14th, we're planning on having Patrick Williams facilitate the afternoon tea and coffee, and his facilitated tea and coffee is titled Beyond the Basics, Empowering Instruction with Technology. And on December 5th, Roberta Clybanner will facilitate a discussion on CSI's grading system, giving us all the nuances, and her discussion is titled F is an Acceptable Grade. I think she's referring to the giving rather than the receiving. If anyone else has a topic that they wish to facilitate and share with their fellow colleagues, please let me know. I need to say that an event like this does not happen by itself. There are a lot of people that have lent their time and support to make this successful. So I want to give thanks to Vice President David Bodell, Professor Linda Reese, and Mary Ann Stummel of Academic Affairs for their input and logistical help, to the CTL Advisory Committee for all their great ideas and their participation in the event, and to Daniel Adman, CTL's tireless college assistant, sitting up there in the front row. Today's conference honors the faculty involved in the Virtual Classroom Project, which is the recipient of the Presidential Award for Innovation and Pedagogy, and Dr. Fairfield Coyle, recipient of the 2000 Presidential Award for Excellence in Teaching. I extend my heartfelt congratulations to all the award participants. I would now like to take this opportunity to introduce President Morales, who will give opening remarks and present the awards.
Thank you very much, Susan. It's really a pleasure to participate in the first annual conference on the Scholarship of Teaching. Teaching is indeed one of our most important core activities. Research and scholarship supports good teaching. And I've been so impressed sitting at the P&B meetings and having an opportunity to look at just the wonderful work our faculty are doing both in scholarship and research and in teaching. Because really they go hand in hand. And I've had an opportunity to spend time with Lee Schulman, the president of the Carnegie Center for Teaching and Learning, which is housed at Stanford University. And I just had that opportunity while serving as a commissioner for the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. And I mention this because spending a full day with really one of the icons of higher education, teaching and learning, having him talk about signature pedagogies and how how most disciplines have really embraced post-secondary pedagogy. And that institutions who embrace not only the scholarship of discovery, but the scholarship of integration, the scholarship of application, and most importantly, the scholarship of teaching, are institutions that are progressive, that care about learning, that care about the assessment of learning, and that care about continuous improvement. And as I lead faculty, and last night I participated in a wonderful Dean's List ceremony, and stood around outside after the ceremony and took countless pictures. I don't know why they want to take a picture of me, but I certainly accommodated many families and students and faculty, and to see the number of faculty and staff at last night's award ceremony reaffirmed why I decided to apply for the presidency here, why I feel so fortunate to be the president of the College of Staten Island. And this is indeed just another wonderful activity as we celebrate what is effective teaching and learning here at the college. But that's enough. I'll stop rambling and get to why I'm here. And that's to take care of some acknowledgement and certainly to, I have the privilege to acknowledge two wonderful awards. The first is the first Presidential Award for Innovation and Pedagogy to the Virtual Classroom Project, an area that I'm very interested in. And on the recommendation of a committee composed of faculty, members, students, and administrators, I am pleased to present the first Presidential Award for Innovation and Pedagogy to the Virtual Classroom Project. This project, an international interdisciplinary collaboration initiated in 2004, resulted in the development of a new course called Global Cultures. The Virtual Classroom Project is the result of a collaboration of the College of Staten Island faculty, the late Francois Rollet, Catherine Levender, Jane Marcus Delgado, the Office of the Vice President, Michael Kress, Director of Media Services, Mark Lowenthal, and institutional partners in Turkey, China, Italy, Greece, and South Africa. The virtual classroom has opened the door to opportunities for CSI students to interact and learn with students and faculty in other countries that would otherwise not be possible. I am pleased to present this plaque to Professor Catherine Levender, Department of History, who will accept the award on behalf of those who collaborated on this exciting project.
Thanks on behalf of everybody. Mike Kress and Mark Lowenthal are here as well. Jane Marcus Delgado is on a Fulbright in Ecuador thing, and that's why we're late to join us. So thanks on behalf of everybody. And also, I don't know if you mentioned Shanghai TV University, which is also involved in the project. So thank you. We're going to join you in the library.
It is also my pleasure to present the 2007 Presidential Award for Excellence in Teaching to Professor Lori Cotto of the Department of Psychology. Professor Cotto began teaching at one of CSI's predecessor institutions, Richmond College, in 1972. She receives this award today as an acknowledgement of and appreciation for her many contributions over 35 years of teaching. Professor Cotto has distinguished herself as a teacher because of her passion for discovering and sharing knowledge. She has a deep commitment to teaching and uses a variety of innovative strategies to encourage students in active learning. In every course she teaches, from the introductory level to the more advanced, she uses creativity and imagination to bring topics alive. She incorporates a broad spectrum of activities in her classes that include science, the arts, culture, videos, sculpture, games, demonstrations, and experiments. The students who are the heart and soul of her work give testimony to her passion for knowledge and her commitment to make the material she teaches meaningful and accessible to all students. Her colleagues praise her and are grateful for the opportunities to collaborate with her. Professor Cuddle's work has been featured in professional journals, and she's made numerous presentations. She delights in the diversity of the world around her, and she shares that joy in her work with students and colleagues. The selection committee, comprised of faculty and students, recommended Professor Cuddle for this award in recognition of her many years of exceptional contributions to the students of the College of Staten Island. I look forward to learning more about Professor Cuddle's approach to teaching and learning from her presentation today. Please join me in congratulating Professor Cuddle as she accepts the 2007 Presidential Award for Excellence in Teaching.
I'm very honored to receive this award. This is the most important event in my entire teaching career. It is not without irony that this event also recognizes teaching innovation through technology. I have always relied on low-tech ways to present visual material. However, I learned a week ago that I could not use them in this theater. It's just too large. And so I want to thank Mark Blumenthal and Kristen Lindbeck of Media Services for making this presentation possible in the form in which you will see it. Media Services has always been essential to my classes. I want to thank all who set up my VCRs, overheads, and slide projectors. I'll be asking them for PowerPoint setups as well. I also want to thank the office staff in the Department of Psychology, Ruth Eisenberg, Alan Freeman, and Vicki Baker. They have also been an essential part of this, making sure I have the materials that I need for my classes. I've had several passions in my life: music, art, and psychology. It has been my great pleasure to participate in music as a choral singer, and I have made psychology my profession. I've also found many opportunities as a teacher to bring art into my classes, as you will see. Today, I will tell you a little bit about my love affair with psychology and how each course has led me to discover new splendors, fascinating issues, and unexpected directions in the study of the mind and behavior. I will be speaking to you on psychology is a many-splendored thing. The history of psychology course explores the origins of major issues in psychology. The course begins with early Greek thinkers, traces the evolution of controversies in philosophy, and then presents the transition from philosophy to science. Let me tell you a little bit of the story about just one of these issues, the problem of mind versus body. What is the mind? Is it part of the body or separate? Non-physical or physical? Where in the body does it act? Answers to these questions today may seem self-evident, but to many, they are not. In the 4th century BC, the Greek philosopher Aristotle believed the heart to be the seat of intelligence and sensation and memory. He argued that memories were stamped into the walls of the heart, just as a seal makes an impression in wax. For Aristotle, the mind was not separate from the body. However, after Aristotle, the rise of Christianity led a number of thinkers to argue that the mind was not physical. became known as dualism. The 17th century philosopher Descartes was just such a dualist. Non-physical mind could act on the physical body in a particular place in the brain, the pineal body. In this diagram from a work by Descartes, the pineal body is represented within the teardrop shape in the center of the brain area. Descartes believed the non-physical mind could cause the pineal body to wiggle back and forth and send animal spirits to the muscles of the bodily machine. Why the pineal body? Because other parts of the brain experience. Descartes argued that there was only one pineal body in the center, where mind interacted with body. In the early 1800s, attempts to locate mental faculties in the brain took a different direction, as Franz Joseph Gall founded a movement known as phrenology. Gall argued that when a mental faculty was well developed, the corresponding part of the brain would swell and cause a bump that could be felt by a trained examiner. Based on virtually no evidence, Gall created diagrams that located mental faculties very precisely. If you look at this diagram to the left of the ear, find the faculty of acquisitiveness. It's a slanted word there. This faculty might be especially prominent in a pickpocket who acquires things. I kid you not. Phrenology became wildly popular. It had all the trappings of a science with none of the empirical evidence that a real science would require. Eventually and gradually, however, a number of true scientists developed methods to study real brains, animal and human, and began to discover where, in fact, the actual basis for some behaviors and mental processes were located in the brain. Some of these pioneers are considered in the history of psychology course. Their contributions were early steps towards remarkable technologies that would let us see the living brain in action, as in these PET scans showing which areas of the brain use more glucose during different activities. Hearing words, seeing words, and speaking words. And we see how these different activities are more active in different parts of the brain. Well, this is only a tiny part of the mind-body story. Many would argue that the mind is what the brain does. But as my students learn, the mind-body problem is still with us. Dualism remains a factor in debates over issues such as abortion and stem cell research. To me, this continuing saga is one of the splendors of psychology, and I never tire of helping my students see the relevance of historical issues to psychology today. Let me move on to another course. The psychology of advertising course came into existence in the 1970s when the city of New York and the university were facing a budget crisis. And I was a new PhD without tenure. I thought to myself that I should prepare for the worst. And I decided to educate myself in advertising by developing a new course in the psychology of advertising. If I lost my job as an assistant professor, I hoped this course experience would help me get another job in advertising. I had never studied a traditional business approach to advertising.
this had an unexpected benefit. It left me free, a blank slate, so to speak, to discover my own French. I have focused on the visual language of advertising to find common strategies that impart meanings to very different products. For example, this ad uses the shadow of Napoleon to suggest that this is indeed the brandy Napoleon. The shadow catches our attention because it does not match the shape of the bottle. This fragrance ad uses a shadow of a shapely, fashionable woman in exactly the same way. This ad surrounds the product with ice to represent its effectiveness and to bring down fever in a very concrete way. Ice means coolness. And this example also represents coolness in a very concrete way. The pack of cigarettes is represented as a block of ice to reinforce the brand name Arctic Lights. The ice also suggests that these cigarettes, which burn and produce smoke, are seemingly icy cold in the taste. As I said, one of my passions is art, and it has been my great pleasure to incorporate it into my courses whenever possible. It turns out that classical art plays a very important role in advertising. Art associates a product with something we recognize and value highly. For example, here is Sargent's portrait of the elegant Madame F. Note her hand resting gracefully on an empty table. Here is the elegant Madame X again, now with glass in hand. Here's one of Degas' many paintings of ballet dancers. Watch that empty space. Now we have a French car associated with a French artist and French dancers with all their grace and beauty. The visual incongruity also catches our attention. Here is Manet's painting of the bar at the Folies Bergère. Now look to the left of the bowl of fruit on the counter. Find the glass with flowers in it. It has a utilitarian shape and is made of ordinary glass. Here is Manet's painting again. But now look to the left of the bowl of fruit. We see a delicate crystal glass that was not in the original painting. What is this? And now, if we look at the complete ad, the ad is for this crystal glassware. This ad gives the impression that the product is identical with that used in Manet's day, whether it says so or not. I admit, this one was so subtle that it almost got by me. Sometimes ads are inspired by well-known paintings and styles. For example, here is Seurat's painting of Sunday afternoon on the island of La Gorgon. The painting is in his style of building up forms from many tiny points, or portraits. Find the branching tree in the upper center of the picture. This ad for a French cheese refers to the tree detail in a style similar to Seurat. Again, a painting by a French artist adds positive meanings to this French cheese. Here is an abstract composition by Mondrian, and here is another abstract composition
inspired by Mondrian. This surrealist painting is by René Magritte, whose paintings usually presented an impossible object or situation. We see feet merging into boots. This Magritte-inspired ad fuses boots and buildings. It concretely represents the expanding readership territory being covered by a publication, Texas Monthly, which is marching out over the landscape. Sometimes an ad will recreate a painting almost exactly. Here is Andrew's painting of La Grande Odalisque in all her naked glory. Here is an exact photographic recreation of the painting by Andrew. The model has an amazing resemblance to La Grande Odalisque. However, this Odalisque is not naked. There is a very strategically placed drape over her hips. But still, this will associate beauty and femininity with this product. Finally, here is Picasso's painting entitled Weeping Woman. Note the angular features of Picasso's Cubist style. Note the angle of the eyes and the strands of hair. This advertisement is for a brand of cigarettes sold in Britain, and it recreates Picasso's painting. The brand is called Silk Cuts. Their ads always show a piece of silk, that's a little purple bit, and something that cuts. But here, the entire painting has been constructed from objects that cut or penetrate. Now, I am not a fan of cigarettes, but I have to say that I think this is one of the more brilliant art ads that I have seen. I want to take this opportunity to thank my students for their many contributions to my Psychology of Advertising course. Many of the best examples, such as one you just saw, Ingrid's La Grande Odalisque, were first found by them as they sought examples of strategies presented in class to compile into their final papers. With their permission, I've often incorporated these into the course. Even today, students who've had the course in the past occasionally send examples. Now, about my London program. The Psychology of Women explores theory and research concerning issues and life events affecting women. Physical and mental health, aging, gender roles, society's expectations, and much more. I first taught this course as a study abroad course, in which I took CSI students to London. My goal was to turn the museums, galleries, historic sites, and theaters into a classroom, and to discover what each institution could reveal about the psychology of women. At first, I felt somewhat like a test pilot flying in the fog in a never-before-tested plane with strategic parts held together with duct tape. However, I soon realized that I had embarked on the most significant experience in my teaching career. There is time to share with you only a few examples of the many activities packed into this month-long 6-credit program, which I was able to run 4 times in the 1990s. And I will limit myself to just one general topic: women's bodies, how they look, society's attitudes toward them, and how women feel about them. One stop was the Museum of Natural History, which you see here. We made use of the superb displays to review the basic biology of hormones and sexuality. We examined what happens during pregnancy and childbirth, all the changes in women's bodies. At another location in London, the Museum of Childhood provided many more insights related to women's bodies from earlier times in history. We learned about Victorian beliefs and practices related to childbirth. Here, one of the students is checking out a birthing chair. We also explored how young girls in early times were dressed as adults. This meant that little girls grew up with the expectation that they too would wear corsets and all the other accessories that would limit their freedom of movement. And you can see in this picture the two dresses side by side, identical. One the mother, one the little girl. The Victoria and Albert Museum has an ongoing exhibition of fashion for both men and women that spans over 3 centuries. Our study of women's fashions revealed constant demands by the dictates of style for women to alter the shapes of their bodies. The variety of corsets, bustles, and other restraints was enormous. Many of these endangered women's health by squeezing internal organs very severely. The National Portrait Gallery had an exhibition entitled The Pursuit of Beauty. Here, students could experience what it felt like to be laced into a corset and to be totally dependent on someone else to be dressed and undressed. A visit to the Freud Museum was on our schedule. Here is where he spent the last year of his life after having to flee from Nazi-occupied Vienna. This provided the setting for discussing how Freud has influenced women's views about their bodies and about their sexuality. This is, of course, the couch, where many of Freud's patients revealed their unconscious minds to him. The class learned of one of Freud's female patients whose symptoms were influenced by Victorian views on sexuality. At the National Gallery, I took the class to see paintings with special relevance to the psychology of women. I'll just show you a few of the ones on the tour that I designed. This painting by Velázquez, known as the Rokeby Venus, is perhaps the most famous painting in the entire museum. This gave us a focal point for the issue of the ideals of beauty and the impossible standards of perfect bodies portrayed in such images. The painting was nearly destroyed by a suffragette in 1914. Several decades later, this person acknowledged that one of the reasons had been that she hadn't liked the way men gawked at the painting. And women today are constantly confronted with unrealistic images of female models. At the other extreme, this painting by Matisse makes fun of the aging process. It satirizes old women who dress inappropriately and try to recreate their youth. An aging body is the focal point. And aging does not get a very sympathetic portrayal in today's media. My final painting from that museum is by Rubens of the Judgment of Paris. And there's much more to the story, of course, but it portrays three goddesses, Minerva, Venus, and Hera, who are competing for a golden apple that Paris will award to the most beautiful woman. The bottom line is, once again, women are depicted as being valued mainly for their appearance. After all of these encounters with the perception of women's bodies in the past, we took a trip into a modern-day environment. Here are the students in front of the sign for the Royal Free Hospital. And here we have the most important class of all concerning women's bodies. We met with the supervisor of the hospital's eating disorders unit. Students learned that society still tells women to reshape their bodies. Rather than the tight corsets they had seen, women today often try to meet society's demands for thinness by refusal to eat or getting rid of food after it has been eaten. They look in mirrors and they do not see their bodies as they really are. Such eating disorders can lead to death, as students learn from the sister of someone who had been in the eating disorders unit, but who had not been able to overcome the illness. As I look back on the CSI London program, I cherish the opportunity that I had to create it. It challenged me to use every scrap of knowledge that I had, and quite a lot of knowledge that I had to acquire on the spot. I hope I showed my students how the study of history, philosophy, sociology, business, and mythology can all enrich our understanding of the psychology of women. Just a few words about the Psychology of Dreams course, which I have so far given only once, after it had not been given for over 25 years. I could never have given this course without the support I received from Alan Adams in the library. Of course, we studied Freud's monumental theory of the interpretation of dreams. And we studied Freud's explorations into the preconscious and unconscious mind. These helped us understand something new to me, the role of dreaming in the creative process. For me, here was another one of the splendors of psychology. It was very exciting for me to learn of significant insights in which dreaming was instrumental. I'll just mention 3 examples. First, Elias Howe had tried for years to perfect a lock-stitch sewing machine. His original design, the first one on the left, had the needle threaded through a hole in the middle. He had a nightmare, and he dreamed that cannibals were boiling them in a pot, and their spears had eye-shaped holes near the tips, which was the center drawing. When he awoke, he made a model of the dream spears and realized that the eye of the needle, as you see on the right, had to be at the tip of the needle. The rest is history. Another well-known example is of a German chemist, Kekuler, who had been trying to understand the molecular structure of benzene, and when he dozed before the fire, he had a vision of a snake seeking hold of its own tail, and this eventually led to his insight into the closed-ring structure that would revolutionize organic chemistry. Still another
discovery that came from a dream. Mendeleev had long tried to figure out how to categorize chemical elements according to their atomic weights. And a dream revealed to him how the elements fell into place. And he went on to wake from his dream and make this note here. And the arrangement led him to discover 3 new elements. Surely, such insights through the unconscious mind rank as some of the splendors of psychology. All that I have time to say about the introductory psychology course is that I have tried to go beyond psychology in my classes. This is my only course with freshmen, and whenever an opportunity has arisen, I have tried to get them to think of why they are here at CSI, to think of opportunities outside the classroom for developing life and leadership skills through clubs, student government, student publications, and sports, to name a few things. I have tried to challenge them to think of their futures, of where they will be in 5 years or 10. I cannot say whether these periodic interludes in the syllabus have had any effect, but I feel better for having said them. It has been a privilege to share with my students these fascinating issues in psychology that have given me so much pleasure. I hope that I will have helped them discover some of the joys of psychology in all its richness, and they will pass these on to others. Meanwhile, I have class tomorrow morning. Lots of interesting things to share with my students. I can hardly wait. Thank you very much. You're always welcome to come to my class anytime. Don't have to tell me that. Please, Debbie has a question.
Just a comment. On the way to school today, I passed a bus, and there's a huge ad, and I'm not sure which artist it was, and who passed it, but one of those women's figures lie down and wearing a bikini.
Ah.
And I couldn't catch it. I don't know if I saw it. What is the ad for? But it's exactly what
I'll look for it. And I invite any of you who see interesting ads, send them to me. Leave them in my box and go to the forest. Thank you again so much.
Okay, next up on our agenda for this event is a panel discussion, so I'm going to ask my panelists to come join me up on the stage. Okay, the theme for this panel discussion is innovation and technology in teaching. And we just had a wonderful talk on somebody who's so innovative. I never realized before that I was being duped with my particular artistic interests. Now I'm going to be a little bit more aware when I see all those ads, as we all should be. But I'm, in thinking about this topic, because we decided we needed a theme for the event, we can look at innovation and technology teaching as either being separate or as one, and each of us has a different view on how that affects our teaching. But we in the computer science department have decided to have them together. And how we've been innovative in using technology is our use of robotics throughout the curriculum. What you see here are some of the robots that we use in our computer science 1 course, our first programming course. And students get to program these robots and get them to do all kinds of things like dance and move around the room. And what's wonderful about it is that the students love playing with the robots. When they start programming, they're doing textual programs that are not very interesting. Print out this, print out that, figure that, calculate this. And all of a sudden now, they get to move an inanimate object with their programs. And they get to experience what it's like in the real world, because sometimes they don't work regardless of how correct your programs are. There's bumps on the floor. There's walls that it bumps into. There are all kinds of real-world issues that they have to deal with when programming programming these cute little robots. And the other plus is, we're not only engaging the students, we engage the faculty. If you look on the right-hand side, you see our fleet of robots. They didn't come that way. We had to build them from little bitty Lego pieces. And just about every faculty member in the department built a robot. Our secretaries built robots, our lab technicians built robots, our students built robots. Everybody was involved and engaged. We use robots in the artificial intelligence course that I teach. The guy on the left is one. And what's amazing is that students come to realize what it means to have an intelligent object, an intelligent agent. In the beginning of the class, we talk about what it means to be intelligent, and most students agree. If you can learn, you're intelligent. So that robot on the right, which you see, students program it using a neural network. It's a machine learning algorithm. And the robot actually learns how to follow the silver path. It's not programmed that way. It learns how to do it by examples that the students give it. And the new kid on the block is our robot on the right. That's the robot that we purchased and are implementing in our new general education course. And that robot also has to be built. And mostly we've had students do that for us. And what we're doing with that robot in the general education courses is we're having the students explore Mars with it. Well, actually not really exploring Mars, but our version of Mars. So the robot is the Mindstorm's NXT robot. You might have seen them in the toy stores, even though it looks like a toy. It's a very sophisticated robot. And it comes with a graphical programming language that allows students to program very intricate and interesting behaviors into the robots without having to have a very intense background in programming languages. So our premise is that the student's robot lands on a plateau, which is represented by a white foam board surrounded by a black background. And they have to find little green men that we have plastered down on the foam board, and you'll find life on Mars. Well, all apologies to stereotyping little green men and Martians. And we're hoping that this, again, will engage students and engage faculty. So, you know, I can talk for a whole hour on this, but I've limited everybody to 5 minutes. So I have to adhere to that myself, but I have to say that when you find a pedagogical technique that works for both you, your faculty, and your students, you've actually found pedagogical gold. Thank you. Next one will be John Oppenheimer. Slide this, please.
I want to talk a little bit about critical reading and learning, in part because I think most of our students come to us really not knowing how to read. That is, they don't know how to read for ideas, for meaning. They know that there are words that have letters in them. They can try to memorize how they're spelled and to spit back those words. And that's really not enough for what we need them to do. So a couple of slides to show you the difference between memorizing factoids versus understanding concepts. Here we have a bunch of factoids. I'm not sure what the students could do other than to perhaps try to memorize column, row, sequence of colors, basically a meaningless process. Perhaps we're beginning to see some patterns here, and maybe a little bit more, but it's still pretty much process of memorization. Maybe some additional details, and here's what we're looking at. A sunflower, which is really a composite of many flowers. This is my representation then of a concept, something that could be understood. We could put together with other sunflowers and talk then about a garden. This hopefully has some understanding involved, and the cohesiveness of the pattern helps one to remember what it is and to understand what it's involving. To try and get at this, I have the students try to understand what words mean. And here is most students know this. I expect most of the faculty know this nursery rhyme. It's probably politically incorrect to ask, but I do it anyway. I ask the students why Jack fell down. I get a whole series of answers. He's clumsy, he's an idiot. And I say, well, why did Joe fall down? Well, she sympathizes with him. Those are much more complex explanations. Gravity is a more simpler explanation. And then if we understand gravity, the question then comes, well, why are they going to the top of the hill to get water? So what I'm trying to get across here is not just reading words, but understanding words, comparing the meaning with your own experience, what you learned, and trying then to proceed a little bit farther. Lori showed you 3 of these. Basically, these are like resonance images. This particular illustration from Rita Carter, Mapping the Mind, 1998. And hearing a specific word being spoken, we're sorted in the speech areas in the upper left portion. Seeing the same word, here we're at the back of the cerebral hemispheres, the visual cortex. Speaking the word, somewhat associated with the centers involved in hearing, but thinking is a totally new area. What does the word mean? What other words are it associated with? And this is what I try to get across to the students, that they have to start thinking. And it takes more than a railroad engine to hit them, to get them to stop memorizing and to start thinking. So the process I use is to have the students outline. This is what I would call a topic outline. There are no verbs. You really can't do much. There's no meaning. There's no process. Again, you pretty much have to memorize it versus a concept outline. Now what we're doing, again, hierarchical order, but we're having to think. I'm assuming they're starting out with written text. What's the main concept? What's the sub-concept? What's its relationship? And so on. And to illustrate that by the indentations, hitting the tab key is not allowed, and working this out in such a way that they send me their outlines by email. And I've already given this on day 1 as to what is supposed to be involved. Basically, to bring about thinking. Not just trying to memorize words. You could never organize this just on the basis of writing words. You have to understand what they mean. So when the students send it to me, I can see whether they're thinking correctly, whether they were tired, or whether they really didn't understand the material at all. Did I go too fast? Yes. This was a very good student outline recently, and the student really did figure out what was going on in terms of what were main concepts, sub-concepts, sub-subconcepts, and how to come back to a higher level concept. The same chapter, another student, basically we're seeing topic headings, we're not seeing sentences. To be able to get anything on the part of the student who did this out of it, in terms of learning, probably approaches 0. And one other thing that one can see is when the students really don't know how to read at all. And they're just putting things down, fragments of sentences, no real ideas, talking about experimental procedure as opposed to the results. Really don't have a good understanding as to how to go about it. So, in sum, Al Gore in his book earlier this year, Assault on Reason, talked about the effect of television and how it presents everything in reality. You don't have to think about it, and this is unfortunately what our students are coming to us with. Most of them have not read a book. I remember as a kid reading novels every 50 pages, there was an illustration, and I had to ask myself, well, is this what I was imagining as I read it? The whole skill of seeing things in your mental mind has been lost as well. So it works for some students. They need to be motivated. An awful lot of the students need a good kick in the pants, and it's hard for them to do it to themselves. Thank you.
And I just wanted to talk today about one really simple kind of thing, which is getting students to use computer technology to annotate the things that they're reading. Because one of the things that was so common in my courses was that we would have a discussion and nobody would read the book before the class, or the reading assignment. Or everyone would say they had read the assignment, and I would have to accept that they were telling me the truth, but then when we had the discussion, it was clear that it hadn't been very well understood. And so one of the things I started doing was having students take the reading material home and mark it up, annotate. And that worked in a kind of low-tech way very successfully, to some extent. But one of the problems was that I had no way of actually seeing what the students were doing while they were doing it. I only saw the end product when they brought it back with them to class. I had no way of looking at their annotations as they were doing them. The use of computer technology and the Blackboard course management system in particular has changed that. Because now I can give the students a passage to read in electronic form. They can put it into their electronic notebook in the Blackboard course management system, and I can look at it as they have marked it up. And then when I see that it's almost completely pristine, or that the comments they've written in don't make much sense, or don't connect with the passage that they're reading, then I can make some comments, and they can read it again. And I just want to show you one sample of that. Is this the button? This was one student's annotation of a page, and she wrote in comments and highlighted it. And then I'm able to comment, and the student can read it again and make successive changes in it. And notice that the student there wrote in, identified where the thesis was right at the top. I don't remember whether that was from the first reading or a subsequent reading after some feedback. And another advantage that I get from the computer and the course management system is that previously when students marked something up and they turned it in, they had to wait until I finished reading it to get it back again. And during the time that I had it, they couldn't do anything with it. But in this environment, they have a copy and I have a copy of the same thing all the time. So they never have to wait to get their notebook back to make the next entry, because I've got all the notebooks and I forgot to bring them to class or something like that. So this really gives me a whole new set of opportunities that I'm really just starting to get command of. And I know that when I read, I do a lot of marking. It's not the only form of note-taking. The one that John mentioned is very important too. That's kind of the next stage after you've read the text and annotated. But at the level of just reading it and marking it up and annotating it, that's very much a part of my experience. But it hasn't often been a part of the student's experience. And the technology that we currently have available makes it possible to institutionalize that and routinize it and make it available to everybody. So I hope that others will find this useful too. Thanks.
And our last panelist, which I'm going to get right now, Peter Gibson, who's going to do the science technology. So you have innovation with that technology.
Yes, I'm the only low-tech speaker today. I just had one idea that I wanted to present. I've been teaching totally asynchronous online courses for about 8 years. And for about the same time, probably a little longer, I've been the college's representative to running across the curriculum. And I have discovered that these two worlds really work together very well. Which is to say that with Blackboard now being available to every section of every course in the entire university, aside from the so-called static elements of the syllabus and the announcements and the course documents, that the more active elements of the discussion boards and groups are a very useful way of having students write informally, without the fear of grades, about any subject you wish them to write about, whether it's chemistry or literature or history, regardless of the subject. Here's a way that students can post their own ideas about many of these subjects without worrying about the grade. Now, there are some management problems. You have to make it compulsory to post because they think if they're coming to class, then posting is not the same thing. In a totally online course, posting is equivalent to attendance, and so the need to post is very important. But I have found over the time that I've been teaching these asynchronous online courses that the conversations of the students are self-directed. The posts are much longer than the kinds of comments that you would get in a class. They're generally more thoughtful, and there's an interchange over time in these conversations because they're permanently stored in the Blackboard. What they don't have, of course, is the spontaneity of the remark in the class. But aside from that, there are many, many advantages to an online discussion. And if it's done in a safe environment, whether it's small groups or a whole class, that it's very useful, and it also allows them to write. And of course, we all know that the City University's Board of Trustees has told us that all our classes have to include writing, not just formal writing, but informal writing. So this is a wonderful way of bringing together the need for students to learn how to write better, to collect their thoughts, and to use technology. So that's my idea for today. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for our panelists?
My question's to John Oppenheimer. You mentioned the reference of the television and how that, that's a mechanism that doesn't encourage critical thinking, perhaps. How about the concept of World by Google, whereas students have at their fingertip the information that would answer almost any question they could ever pose by just putting it into Google and coming out with a search engine type answer? Have you thought about how that will affect our teaching and what will be on the minds of our students in the future?
Well, I have one example to give you, and that is a student of mine who went to Wikipedia and gave back on an exam information from Wikipedia rather than from the textbook. And if I knew who had written the entry for Wikipedia on this particular topic, I would have complimented them on a beautiful job of total BS. And of course, the student put it on the exam. I've used the internet. I look for other university sites, so on, but there has to be some ability to differentiate. And again, what I think some of the students do when they go to the internet is they simply download information. They may mix and match, try and create something that looks like their own, but it's really a way to avoid thinking at all. To try and find out a close relative of mine, I won't mention who, in high school, did an awful lot of literature critique by looking up the critiques that were already on the web. So I don't know what ultimately we're going to get out of it. Certainly it's a tremendous information source, but there's information and there's information. I don't know if that answers you.
It certainly does. I think it challenges us as we look to the future to, first of all, evaluate the quality of the information, but I think that's only the beginning. I think that if you really look deep into it, the concept of remembering things and analyzing things critically could fall to the wayside if the whole population seems to form to the position where if they need to know something, they just look it up on the internet. And it's getting to be more and more a part of the way that our young people interact, not only to answer your questions in class, but in everyday world. You know, if you want to know something about something, just go to Google. Why bother remembering it? It's a whole different mindset in terms of their learning models.
Well, in terms of the CPE exam, which all of our students have to take after 60 credits or so, they get 2 readings on the same topic, same bold-based terms, and all they know how to do is, oh, same term, and then they're asked, well, how did author A differ from author B? Oh, they use the same terms. They don't, again, they have to be able to read for understanding in order to even deal with that kind of question. There was another?
Well, I was just going to say that in some of my classes, I teach critical thinking by having them look at websites and to determine, who wrote this and when was it updated, and then search for information about the author. And they're often surprised to find that an entry is written by a junior high school student for some school assignment. So I think that we can use our students' facility with the internet and Google by teaching the critical reading of entries in the internet. And it's a good way to include that in the class.
Can I ask Harvey a question?
Of course.
How did the Greeks distinguish between nu and psyche? The Greeks distinguish between nu, mind, and psyche. Aristotle and subsequently, because there seems to be talks about the heart, about the mind.
Well, that is where Aristotle believed the basic functions to be there. I think he thought the brain was like an air conditioner or a cool pump. So I don't think he really, to my knowledge, made this fine distinction.
Just returning back to the web question, astronomy community is using what we call critical inquiries in the web. I feel the key there is how you phrase the question. To make the students think, you phrase a question and make them think, and then they can use the web to try to answer that question. It's been pretty successful.
Any other questions?
Could you repeat that? Couldn't be heard on this side.
Oh, I'm sorry. You got people telling me to tone them down. I was saying that in astronomy, we use, as part of each homework assignment, we have a critical inquiry from the web question. And so I feel that the benefit of the web is to make the students think about a question, because it's the question that makes them think. But the web is a great resource to go out and gather the information to try to answer that question. And I felt we've been pretty successful in doing that.
Debbie?
Think of it.
I have a question about online forums. We also use it extensively in computer science in our senior seminar. How do you handle, Professor Miller, how do you handle giving the students the freedom to post, but also how do you handle if they misspell words or if their grammar, they have mistakes in their grammar?
Right. Usually it depends on the level of course, obviously. But even in the second semester of composition courses, the posts are generally cleaned up. I mean, one of the advantages of posting is that you can sleep on it, you can use spell checks, you can
I'd like to respond to that question too, and not only to agree with Peter completely, but to also say that one of the things that I do with students who continuously violate those rules is to send them a private message, not to criticize them in any sort of public way, but to send them sometimes a couple of private messages saying it's really not acceptable to post without sentences that start with a capital letter. It's really not acceptable to use lowercase I to refer to yourself. And I want you to please go back and edit your example. And I would say 90 times out of 100 when I do that, I get a reply from the student saying, thank you very much for pointing that out. They don't resent it or feel that they're being imposed on.
I'd like to say something else about this whole business of online posting, in that if you put up a sign, if you teach a novel in a class, it is acceptable that most students don't say too much, that they don't talk in groups, that they get the writing assignment to the novel and write the paper in the last weekend and perhaps read the book in the last weekend, and will get by. In an online course, that's totally unacceptable, because if you don't post that week on what the work is that week, you have in effect not been to class. So it sets up different kinds of responsibility with the online student, which many students find at the end of the term. They say, oh, I thought this was going to be easier. The online course would be easier, when in fact it was a lot harder, because I had to sustain this responsibility each week over time, and I wasn't accustomed to that because my regular classes don't ask me to do that. That's an interesting response.
I'm going to put a little bit of advertising here. The Center for Teaching and Learning has its own discussion board, which we are trying to get conversation with the faculty on pedagogical issues, and every event that we have, we'll probably send them an email about what was discussed at the event, and hopefully people will be able to discuss it further online. So at this point, I'm going to say we shall discuss this further online, and we can retire for some coffee and cake and a lunch. Thank you all for coming.